Hi guys, so in this section we'll be looking at the different tools that are available on the Eagle tool palette. So the very first tool that you will be using on Eagle is the add tool. It helps you add components to your schematic. That's basically the circuit that you want to make. Let's see how it works. You click on the add symbol that looks like an AND gate symbol. So this is how your add tool looks like. The space on the left gives you the name and the description of the component. Now one thing that you must understand here is components are divided into categories, subcategories and sub-subcategories depending upon their package, depending upon their dimensions, their type, whether the component follows European library or the US library. That's basically European representation or the US representation. So when you're looking for a particular component, let's say resistor, if you search resistor, it will come up with so many options. So this is one folder, this is a category under which you have one subfolder. Like that you have many categories, subcategories and subcategories available. Then again RCL is one more category under which REU is the European representation, whereas RUS is the US representation. You may have multiple. When talking about resistors, we typically deal with this resistor library. When you expand the REU folder further, it says that European standards will use this particular symbol to indicate a resistor. You click on one. Now this REU0204 for 2 volts, 5. These are actually your components. You need to search recursive through folders. By recursive I mean you will have to look at a folder, you will have to look at a category, then look at a subcategory, and then when finally you see there is no more expansion possible, that means now you are now looking at physical components possible. And another way to identify whether you're looking at a category or a component is the difference of the on the right hand side window. Only physical components will have component footprint. So this right hand side image is called the component footprint, whereas your category will not have the footprint. Only physical components will have footprints. When you start up Eagle, it can sometimes happen that your add window doesn't show any components here. In that case you will have to go to library, then say use, select all libraries, say open. Process takes some time, and then you can go ahead, click on add, and then choose whichever component you're looking for. Now let's get started with a simple circuit. To begin with, we'll be just making a voltage divider with two resistors, a voltage source and ground. The resistors that we'll be using is RUS 207/10. Once you've identified which component you want to use, you have to say OK. Do not select drop. It drops that particular component from the add library options. Cancel isn't required. Once you've selected the component that you want to use, you say OK. And then you see your mouse pointer, the arrow disappears, it associates the component with itself. You click once, it places your component once. See, you must see that it doesn't release the component, it still holds it back. If you want multiple instances of the same component, you can do that by clicking multiple times. And when you feel that okay, now I don't really need any more resistors, you can hit the escape key. It takes you back to the add component window, and then you can go ahead and look for the next component that you want to add. Since we are making a voltage divider, we won't be needing so many resistors, but when you are dealing with a larger complex circuit, care must be taken that you don't place resistors in this fashion. We'll see what happens when resistors get connected like this. Let's focus on R5. If you see, there's a very thin plus sign indicated over here. It's a very thin plus sign. It is called the component origin. So whatever action you want to perform with this particular component, you can by clicking on the component origin. Okay, let's see what happens when I right click on the origin. It highlights, it's highlighted, that means it's selected, and I have so many options possible with this particular component. Okay, now if you observe on a right click, you have some options possible out here, and these are the same which are available on your toolbar. You can associate them with the icon next to the function. Try right clicking on the component origin and just observe the icons. That'll help you further. Now let's go on to the next tool. It's a third tool from the left. It's the move tool. You select the tool, click on the origin, and your component is selected and free to move. Now let's see what happens in this particular case. If I now move either of these, you see it's connected with a wire. It's got connected with a wire. Now this wasn't my requirement, but it still happened. So unless you know that you want a connection like this, don't connect resistors in this fashion. Place them apart. When you have move tool selected and you left click on the origin, the component is free and selected. Now when you decide that I want to place this not from here, instead I want to move it here, you simply left click and release the component. It gets placed at its new position. Now let's get rid of these extra components. You have the delete tool right next to your add tool. It's on the left of the add tool. Select the tool, click on the origin, left click on the origin, left click. The next is right next to your move tool, you have the copy tool. Select the tool, click on the origin, it creates a copy of that component. You place it somewhere, it creates a new component. Under the move, you have a mirror tool. You select the tool, you click, it just creates a mirror image of your component. You want to rotate it with some angle. You have the rotate tool right next to your mirror tool. For every tool to perform that particular action on the component, you select the tool and left click on the origin and the action is performed. Then you have a change tool. We will look at this tool when we are dealing with our layout. As of now, we will skip this tool. You have a group tool. Now this tool is really helpful when you are making larger schematics. Click on the tool, that is basically select the tool. You select the area of schematic that you want to perform an action with. Let's say I just want to move these two components from here to some other place. Once you have selected your components, they turn bright red. Now say I want to move these components. So I select the move tool. Now to perform the move action on a group, I have to right click and then the move group option appears. Select, then I have the move group option up over here. I select that and then the group is free to move. Now an easier way to do this. So similarly, once you have the group selected, you can perform a function on the entire group. Let's say now I want to copy. So I first select the group, right click, and then say copy group. There are a few tools which will be easier to understand when we are dealing with integrated circuits or ICs. We will have a look at them with due course of time. Now let's go ahead and make a simple schematic out of this. You select the move tool. Okay, once you have your components selected, you can right click and it rotates. So this is a shortcut to rotate. So if you observe, you have a letter T present here, which is the text tool. We'll look at it later. Right next to it is the wire tool on the left. Select the wire tool and connect the two components. Now if you observe, once I have made my connection, any tool in Eagle doesn't release itself. It feels that probably you want to use it more. So they have a hotkey to release any action, which is press escape. So escape is your hotkey to release any tool. Now I'm trying to make a voltage divider circuit. So I have R1, R2 here, and an output must be taken from this particular junction. So let's say I need the wire tool again. So this is going to be my output. I will need some supply and I will need ground. Let's go ahead and add ground and supply. On your add tool, you can type VDD. From the supply 1 library, you can select, I will select this particular symbol from supply 2 and I place it here. It says rename net segment by supply pin VDD. I say yes because I want this particular node to be VDD. I have an extra piece of wire here, so I select the delete tool and click on the wire. It's deleted. I go ahead and add ground now. Type GND. Let's take supply 1 ground and I place it here. Okay, so this warning shouldn't be neglected. If you are making the power and the ground connections and this doesn't pop up, that means your connections are not correct. I want to merge this and say call it ground, so I say yes. Now when making wired connections with the component, care must be taken that the green of the wire and the red or the brown of the component just touch or they just meet, your wire shouldn't overlap the component. So if there's a connection like this, you see there's an overlap, this is wrong. It should only be so much. If your wire exceeds over the component or it overlaps the component, Eagle will consider it as a floating connection and the connection is not made. Connect, it's simple. Select the wire tool, left click on the junction, left click on the junction, say yes. Now when we want a junction to be formed, we need to tell Eagle that I want a junction at this point. Otherwise it only considers one connection through that wire. So since it's a voltage divider and the output is taken from here, I need this to be a junction and not just a connection through R1. So let's just this junction here. So you have the junction tool right here. It's a plus sign with a dot in the middle. You select the tool and just place wherever you need a junction to be. Okay, this is done. So now let's rename our components. On the tool palette again, you have a name tool available here. You select the tool and click on the origin. It gives you an option to rename. For us, it's okay, let it be R1. Let's not change, but it's important to know that these tools are available. You can also right click on a component and say name and give a name that you want to give. Next to your name tool, you have a value tool. Select the tool, right click on the component. Let's say I want this resistor to be 1K and I want this also to be 1K. So you select the tool, click on the origin, gives you an option to enter the value. You can also right click and say value. It will take you to the same window. Now this is if you want to name the component. What if I want to name a wire? How do I? You see this tool out here right next to your junction tool. It's called the label tool. This helps you to name wires and not components. Significance of this tool you realize when you are making bigger complex schematics. But let's just see how you can use it. Okay, to use label tool, you first need to select wire, create a small 1 unit wire stub from where you want to make a label. Once you're done with the wire stub, go ahead, select the label tool and click on the wire. Once you click on the wire, a $N something appears. That means it's a net. That this $N symbol indicates that now you are naming a net and not a component. Place this label somewhere. Then you can take the name tool, click on it, select the name tool, click on the origin. So every component that you place on Eagle gets associated with an origin. See, there's a plus sign here. For VDD there's an indication here. For ground there's an indication here. So let's say I want to rename this thing. So I select the name tool, click on the origin. I want to call this as out. Now a shortcut to this right click method, wherein you first have to select your area, select the tool, then right click and then move. Instead of this 3-4 mouse clicks, you can simply first select your area, then select the action that you want to perform, then press your control key and drag it along with your right click press. Control plus right click will mimic your action. Now let's add another component. Say I want to add a 555 IC. So I will type 555. Now the search on Eagle is case sensitive, is highly case sensitive. Sometimes you need to direct a search by indicating an asterisk to it if it's a number. So when I say asterisk 555, it will give me all the options which have the number 555 associated. Now within this list I have to look for which particular IC I am looking for. When I say I am looking for the standard timer IC, I have to look for the ST Microelectronics NE555. So if once I know that it's called NE555, then I can directly hit asterisk, type NE capital and then 555. It will show me only those two options which satisfy this particular criteria. Now once I know that I want to use this, I select an IC. Okay, fine. So this IC looks like this. Okay, I select the IC and I just want one instance of my IC. It so happens that you don't realize that your mouse has been clicked multiple times and you create multiple instances of a component without being aware of it being created. It very much happens with ICs and even sometimes with simple components. So if you observe closely, the component numbering will look shabby. When you see a component numbered like this, you must understand that there are multiple instances of the component created and you need to get rid of the extra ones. So you select the delete tool and click on the origin of this IC. Now it highlights which particular which particular instance of that component you want to delete. If you now right click, it will move, it hops to the next instance. Now if I right click again, it will move to the other instance. Now as of now it indicates that I have delete tool selected. I have IC1 selected. So this will delete the IC1 instance of this IC, of this particular component. But let's say I don't want to delete IC1, I want to delete the third instance. So right click on the origin will take me to the third instance, and then left click will delete that particular instance. Let's do it again, and I have all the extra ICs out. Now let's see what specific tools are available for ICs in Eagle. On your toolbar you have a smash tool right below your name tool. You select the smash tool and click on the origin. Just observe this component first. You have only one origin possible. So let's say I want to move this thing. If I want to move the component, I can move it as a whole. And if I just want to move these figures and these labels around, I can do that. Sometimes you might require to move only the labels around when you are making a complex schematic. Looking at an IC independently, you wouldn't realize the need of it, but when you are making a complex schematic, you might want to do that. There's a tool for that present in Eagle. You have the smash tool right below your name tool. Click on smash and click on the origin. Now you see there is an origin appearing for IC1 label and the NE555 label. Once you have the origin associated with these, you can perform any actions. So let's say I want to move this label. I select on the move tool, click on the origin, and I can move this around. If I want to move this label, I can move it around. What I can't do is I can't move around the pin numbers, because moving around pin numbers is only going to complicate it further. There are a few more tools associated with ICs and we'll look at them later. You can use your control plus zoom options, control plus scroll to zoom in and out of your schematic. Before you go ahead and make a board or a layout of your schematic, you need to perform 2-3 checks. The very first basic check is this eye tool, not the letter I, it's the human eye, which is the show tool. Click on the show tool and click on the wire. Click on the show tool and click on the wire, that is the green line. When I click on a particular wire or a net, as Eagle refers to it, it indicates, it highlights the components to which that node or that particular net is connected. Similarly, I can click on this net and see yes, my VDD and R1 are connected. Similarly, let's see if R2 and ground are connected. Yes, they are connected. This is a visual check on your connections just to ensure that no component is left out. Now let's say if you would have had a connection like this, where your wire is overlapping another wire, and now if I say show tool and I click here, it will highlight only one component, it doesn't highlight the other one. That means your connection is not correct. You can select the delete tool and delete the unnecessary wire. So these are visual check methods. Eagle itself has its own electric rule check which a designer will need to perform before going ahead with the board layout. So that's going to be a good habit. If you perform electric rule check, you will know that for sure it's just to confirm that your design really doesn't have any error. Maybe you, for visual checking, you might at times skip certain connections. Now one thing that we need to understand is that this particular exercise we've only done to get to understand the tools available on Eagle. One last tool that we need to check is the ERC. That is just to be sure that my circuit or my design is error proof. It's called the electric rule check. So when your schematic is done, you click on the tool and it runs an electric rule check. See, it says there are no errors, but there are 4 warnings which indicate there is only one pin on my VDD and the ground net, which when we look at the circuit theoretically, it is proper, it is correct, but practically for Eagle to evaluate, it should have a complete circuit and not VDD and ground like this. We will look at the modifications in the circuit in the next session when we begin with the first project, which will be the voltage divider, schematic and the layout in Eagle. Until then, thank you.